So, disclosures, because we know that we have to always start with that. I am a full-time employee of ILSI North America. I have no financial ownership of alternative protein companies. I did work in industry and for a trade association previously. And I currently provide no consulting services for for-profit food or food ingredient companies. Let's start with first, who is ILSI North America? We are a nonprofit scientific organization that's focused on advancing science in food safety and nutrition. We do not lobby. We do not go after developing policy positions. Rather, we collaboratively address areas of interest in food safety and nutrition. Now, within ILSI North America's portfolio in 2019, we did a lot to advance science, okay? This slide is highlighting the 17 peer-reviewed publications we had, the 33 different scientific sessions or events that we hosted or participated in. Most of the work that we do is done in our scientific committees, whether it be bioactives or sodium, whether it be caffeine or food packaging. But we also do a lot of work in emerging science, which is handled a bit differently. And I want to spend my time here today talking about the Future Foods event on alternative protein sources that we hosted in November of 2019. The first day was more open. It was a symposium where we had a series of speakers covering various topics, all about alternative proteins. We then broke the next day into an invitation-only experts roundtable to really dial in on some of those scientific questions. Now, one of the questions I've gotten even here today has been, well, great, you guys are talking about alternative proteins. What do you mean by that? We are purposefully taking, as candidly society does, a very broad view on what we mean. So whether it's the plant-based proteins shown all the way on the left-hand side, insects, mushrooms, algae, or the bioreactor-derived cellular type meat. In fact, our Future Foods event covered that entire range of alternative protein sources. So pretty big, pretty diverse. What we wound up discussing and why we had to go so diverse is it's all about the consumer interests. So consumer interests, as many of us know, and actually we already heard this morning, are driving a lot of the change in the food ecosystem. You've got consumers who are concerned about cost and frugality. We've got consumers who are very interested in making sure that their labels are simple or clean. We have consumers that are more and more embracing the role of food and health, nutrition, and performance. We also know that there are consumers who are basing their purchasing decisions on animal welfare concerns, or they're basing their purchases on the environment. Against all of this, it starts to become, and this is a bit of a rhetorical question, as we're looking at alternative proteins and the growth that they've had in the market, should we be really looking at alternative proteins replacing animal proteins or replacing plant-based proteins? And if so, with both of them, based on what criteria? Is it amino acids? Is it digestibility? Non-protein components? And then, of course, some of this, of course, becomes circular, going back to the consumer demand issue. The consumer component, and candidly, how we get past that as society, is dependent upon science. We know, as consumers and as scientists, that there is lots of conflicting information. Whether it's red meat's good for you, red meat's bad for you. Plant-based burgers are healthy, plant-based burgers are ultra-processed and unhealthy. This media coverage goes out and creates confusion. To address the confusion, we need to be thinking a lot about the science. So when we think about the science and proteins of foods, it's coming into what are the requirements? What about protein quality? What about functionality? From the safety side, we have to realize there is a food safety component with nutrient displacement, nutritive factors, and allergenicity. All of this, of course, links into some additional regulatory issues. With this, I'm going to switch gears and go into, I'll call it a little mini case study that actually is talking about dogs, okay? Humor me, because there's been a report very recently around changes in diet and changes in health. And when we talk about trends in nutrition, we need to realize that that's some of why we're all here and interested in the topic. So this screenshot shows a capture of US FDA's work regarding the potential link between certain diets and canine dilated cardiomyopathy. So in 2018, canine dilated cardiomyopathy, which is basically an enlarged heart, the FDA went from having reports of animals, often big breeds like boxers. That occurrence was, let's say, 5. In 2018, it jumped to 500. Animals, you know exactly what you're feeding them. FDA went and realized that all of these reports were related to animals consuming grain-free dog food, which it's a replacement, okay? It's a dietary replacement, protein side, with high proportions of peas, lentils, pulses, or potatoes. And the enlarged heart syndrome in dogs, right, is a recognized genetic condition, okay? It's, as I mentioned before, boxers often get it. There is a link genetically to taurine deficiency. So you sit there and go, okay, wait, we might have something that we're observing, we understand the biology a little bit, and it goes on. Well, what FDA wound up finding was it's maybe not quite that simple, so they have to do even more work. And that work is still ongoing. So dogs can synthesize taurine from cysteine and methionine. US FDA went and did some research and realized that nearly all the grain-free dog food on the market had the required levels of methionine and or cysteine in the diet. So that diet cause was there, but FDA still has questions, and they're still working on this effort to gather information to understand if and how taurine metabolism, both absorption and excretion, can have a role in canine dilated cardiomyopathy. So I wanted to hit on this because I think this gets into the value of making sure we have science first and foremost in what we're doing in nutrition and in the food ecosystem. So with that, I'm also going to highlight here, and in the interest of time, I will be a bit brief, that there are publications somewhat similarly, and this one is a snapshot from 2014 of the Archives of Pediatrics that notes severe nutritional deficiencies in young infants with inappropriate severe nutritional deficiencies in young infants with inappropriate plant milk consumption. Okay? So this is an area that, from the public health side, we need to be looking at, right? Is there a risk to consumers, perhaps based on nutrient density? Is there questions around identity and around the definition of what is milk. So this is a human health, public health impact area, this alternative protein space. So as this is moving on, I want to show this slide, and I'm going to ask, as you look at it, which of these two burgers is more healthy? You've got option 1 and option 2. Calories, 660 versus 630. We've got, and I'll call this out, sodium, 980 versus 1,080. Anybody want to guess? So, I'll give you a little bit more. One of these, the ingredient listed is beef. The other one of these is engineered plant-based protein. So the one on the left, number 1, is beef. The second one is a engineered plant-based product. So this, I think, goes to and builds from the way there's impacts in nutrition, right? Perhaps from just going, quote, grains-free. We know we've got challenges with replacements of diets otherwise, and here's another space. This is hopefully emphasizing, as we think about it, the importance of science, okay? We, as scientists, we, as ILSI, with our tripartite representation, have a clear call to action to work in this alternative protein space. Uniquely, because we can bring together through this event and other events, whether it be ILSI North America or other entities, can really work to serve for the betterment of public health. We do this through our multi-sector engagements. And while we've spent time here today talking about alternative protein sources, I would challenge all of us to embrace that other emerging science areas, whether it's AI, microbiome, et cetera, are all going to have the exact same benefits for public health and engagement. So with that, time-wise, I'm good, and I thank you all for your time today.